lot of folks are starting to say that the Fed is almost done fighting inflation and that much discussed Fed pivot is just around the corner. Well, folks, I'm sorry to break it to you, but the Fed hasn't even begun to fight inflation. See this line right here? This is CPI, or the Consumer Price Index. This is the most popular measure of inflation. And you can see this little tiny itty bitty little reduction in CPI here. That's the last 3 months. That is from June, when we peaked at 9.1% year over year inflation in the CPI, all the way through the September read that came out last week at 8.2. This itty bitty little reduction in inflation is all we have to show for what the Fed has done so far. And we're going to show you in the numbers that even that really has nothing to do with the Federal Reserve. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a line for core inflation. That's all items less food and energy. Now, that's going to be this lower trend line right next to me. That's all items less food and energy, or core inflation. And you can see here, even over these last couple of months, while the headline inflation number has come down, the core inflation has continued to rise, which means everything else is still getting more expensive. So why has the headline number come down for the last few months, even though everything else has gotten more expensive? Well, to understand that, we're going to add the index for energy to this chart. And all of a sudden, you can see the two red lines, they flatten right out, because here we go. It's energy that has come down substantially over these last 3 months. And almost the entirety of the reduction in CPI from June through September has been explained by this drawdown on the blue line here in energy. The only other category that's seen any meaningful reduction has been vehicles. And you can see here the yellow line that I just added, that shows the index for vehicles. It peaked at around 13.2% in May, and now it's down around 10.1%. But almost the entirety of the reduction in CPI has been driven by the index for energy. And why has the index for energy come down so much? Mainly because of gasoline, and we know why gasoline has gotten cheaper. That's right, it's because of this chart right here. This is the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And can you see right here that blue line? That's Joe Biden dumping 1 million barrels per day on the open market in order to overinflate the supply of oil and bring the price down. That's more oil than most countries in OPEC produce in a given day. Almost the entirety of the reduction in CPI from June through September, from 9.1% to 8.2%, has been driven by this one chart, the dumping of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And you can see this chart goes all the way back to 1983. Joe Biden has dumped more oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve than every other president in my lifetime combined. And the Saudis know that, and the Russians know that, and that's why they have agreed to cut oil production by 2 million barrels a day to offset this chart right here. So any effect that the price of oil and the price of gasoline has had on the CPI is about to disappear. These energy prices are going higher, and that means these inflation numbers are coming back. So all of these rate hikes from the Fed, the 25 basis points in March, the 50 after that, the 75, the 75, all of the quantitative tightening, all these actions the Federal Reserve is taking right now to fight inflation, it has only resulted in this pathetic little dip in the headline inflation number. And even that, the entirety of that little dip was driven solely by this big reduction in the index for energy. So the Fed is not going to pivot. The Fed has not beaten inflation. The Fed hasn't even begun to beat inflation. They have not made the slightest dent. The only thing that has come down is autos and energy. And the price of everything, literally, here we go, all items less food and energy, the price of everything else has gone up. Now, it's possible that the Fed's rate increases has had an effect on things like the price of a new car, because if interest rates go higher, then the payments on those cars go up and people can't afford to buy them anymore. So that's possible that has been contributing to the price of the vehicles coming down. But realistically, the price of the vehicles is coming down because they were in bubble proportions because of the chip shortage that we all heard so much about last year. Well, that is finally starting to work its way through. There's more inventory at the car lots now. Although prices aren't rising as fast, they're still very high. But the price of a new car is probably a moot point anyway, because it doesn't matter. Energy is going to get so expensive over the next few months that even if you can afford to buy a new car, chances are you won't be able to afford to drive it anywhere. Which, of course, should make these lovely folks so much happier. There they are, couple of nice gals dumping some SpaghettiOs on a priceless work of art. Oh, and here's that same activist explaining exactly why she threw soup at a Van Gogh painting, because that's a totally normal thing to do, to throw soup at a Van Gogh painting. Oh, and by the way, check these out. You see these these earrings here that look like she bought them out of the back of a van at an AC/DC concert 25 years ago, should we tell her what those are made of? But hey, there's nothing like overcompensating for your own insecurities by making hundreds of millions of people cold and poor and hungry throughout the course of this winter, which is exactly what's going to happen. These folks are getting their way. The price of energy is going to go significantly higher, and inflation is going to get significantly worse in the coming months. And no, the Fed is not going to pivot anytime soon because of that. And folks, until next time, live small and dream big, and don't throw soup on priceless works of art.